I'm Gil Broussard, a member of the Louisiana Home Builders PAC. I'm here to say Louisiana has some of the highest taxes in the nation. I'm asking you to vote yes on Amendment 1 on October the 14th to make sure they don't get even higher. Voting yes on Amendment 1 will keep you from paying unfair new taxes while building your new home or business. Please vote yes on Amendment 1 to prevent new taxes that will affect your future. Election Day is this Saturday, October the 14th.
Paid for by Louisiana Taxpayer Protection PAC.
I drew a total blank. And of course, it's Friday night. It is, for those of you keeping track, and I'm going to check on that too. There'll be a test. It's the 6th of October, and this is, late as usual, the Supernatural Substation with your host, me, Ellen Castanio. My co-host, Bernadine LeBlanc. Say hello, Bernadine.
What's up, peoples?
That was good. And Zeke. He's waving. He's just, he's snacking on brains. So, we are in the crosshairs over here. You had it with Harvey. Yeah. Some other people had it with Irma over in Florida. And then we're supposed to be imperiled by Nate, which will be a hurricane, I think, when it gets to the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And so we did an equipment check, and secured the things and, everything outside so it doesn't blow around and be offensive to our neighbors. And then we, I made some shrimp scampi and I made a cake. So
well, there you go. You all set.
For the weekend. Yeah, it's going to be like a one-day thing. But people are running around like, Chicken Little, like the sky is falling. And I have cousins. And I love them, their family, but man, one of them wanted to be a meteorologist, and she missed the chance. And I think I mentioned this last week, but it just doesn't matter. As soon as there's a low or a plane flies out and they say they're investigating something, it's nonstop. It's going to go here. Where's it going to go? It's going to go to spaghetti plots, this model, that model. For God's sake, I mean, they ought to be glad. Everybody ought to be glad that we at least have a general idea, because if this was like, I don't know, 1817 instead of 20, even 1917, we were pretty screwed. You didn't know something was coming until like you saw it coming,
Right.
And all you little, whoever, Indian friends and gypsies who can foretell, the weather and all, still, you didn't know it was coming until it was coming. So anyway, well, at least we have that. So I think I'll be here next Friday. I don't know. I mean, I hate to laugh about it, but we've been through, having been through Katrina and, Camille, as we were just talking about. And this is really not going to be that much of a, it's going to be a rainmaker, and it's going to blow some trees around, which, I hope. But maybe the electricity will go out, briefly. But I just don't think, I guess New Orleans feels like it just wants to get in there, that they were left out of the coastal, the coastal assault of hurricanes of this year. So anyway, whoever's in its path, and I wish you luck with that. And hey, we'll still be here. They showed New Orleans. They had one view on the Weather Channel of the lakefront, and it looks, pretty quiet and all. And then the next hour they had one of Bourbon Street. And it's crowded and packed with people.
Of course it is.
All right, what hurricane? There's a hurricane coming here, and they're walking.
There's a hurricane party in the quarter at all times.
At all times, yeah. It could be anything. It's for every holiday, every possible event. So, but I mean, we're pretty. It would be odd and sort of a poetic justice, in my opinion, for for New Orleans to get wiped out. As by what's little more than a tropical storm, but that's just they shouldn't have taken the statues down. Stuff, you know what I mean? But anyway, so here we are. We're at the first weekend of October, and we have our guest coming up later. Brennan Storr is his name, and he's the first of the guests of October. He's the author of a book called A Strange Little Town, and we're going to we're going to be talking to him within about, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes from now. So in preparation for the big day, because a lot of people look forward to a lot of stuff, but certain of us, like us, look forward to Halloween. Even if I don't go out and do anything, it's like, wow, it's still Halloween, you know?
I started Halloween on the last day of last month.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I was out, because Shane played at a club, and it's this nice, high class piano bar, and in walks me dressed in black and red with my red contacts, looking like a vampire. Everybody's looking at me like, oh crap.
And they move to another side of the room. Yeah.
There's nothing basic
Scare
about
the
me,
hell out
but
of
okay.
Yeah, Southwest
They're like,
Louisiana.
it's not Halloween yet. I say, hey, at
Yeah,
midnight, it's October, and I celebrate Halloween from October 1st to the end of October.
Really, for everyone else to see, but it's like all year it's Halloween.
Right.
Yeah, I've been putting, I've been putting my decorations and stuff up, and a little bit at a time, because I don't want to go. You got to look at it for a month. It's okay, but it's like, you want to start getting where you're changing it. So, I did some stuff and waiting for the little trick-or-treaters. But as usual, we always talk about something before the guest comes on. So I think probably for the rest of the month, Dean, and we're gonna have some guests on the beginning, so we might just throw it in at the end. But we can talk about Halloween, and you had sent me a link about
I was trying to find something what not to do, like spirit communication during Halloween, but I couldn't find that.
Well, what you sent me was a site basically that said, are ghosts and spirits more active during Halloween? So what do you think?
I had a case a couple of years ago, and they're still having trouble till this day. Actually, they live in Texas now, and I got a call last week. They're still having a lot of problems. They had no problems with any spirit activity, anything paranormal, until, and they're friends of mine, their son called me. He was 18 at the time, and he called and said, what is your advice on doing an EVP session in the oldest graveyard in our local town on Halloween night? And of course, I said no.
Yeah,
not a good
not
idea.
even on another night. It's not really.
Yeah, it's not. You're not an investigator. You have an app on your phone. You are a teenager. Don't do it. You're gonna have consequences. Well, of course, I don't know why they asked me for my advice, because they don't listen. He did it anyway. A week later,
maybe if you'd have said, "Oh yeah,
go and do it. Bring a Ouija board with you." But his mother called me, and she was really worried about him, and I talked to him on the phone. I'm like, well, what's going on? Trying not to laugh, but he's like,
trying not to tell them. Wait, is this going on?
I told you so. But he said since that night, he went home. They've been having activity. Well, mostly him is where it started. A woman would whisper in his ear while he was asleep.
Oh, Lord.
And then all kinds of, because I told him from the beginning, I said, when you do things like that, and, it's just, you don't know what could happen, because you're dealing with something you can't see to begin with. So you don't know what you're dealing with. If you're going to provoke, you don't know what you're going to take home with you. So it doesn't just affect you, it affects your whole family. It starts with you. And he actually had to go into a mental facility for a little while because he couldn't deal with it.
We know where he'll be on Halloween.
Now that he's grown on and still having problems, but he's a father now, but his family is still dealing with the problem wherever they move. It follows them.
Well, That's one of the things you shouldn't,
Yeah.
graveyards, cemeteries, and burial grounds are notorious for a reason. We've talked about this before on the show down here in New Orleans, as well as, I don't know, in Dry Prong, Louisiana, and yes, that town does exist. And I love to say that name, Dry Prong, Louisiana. They have a cemetery too, I'm sure. And, any cemetery that's old, really, really old or has really old parts that no longer receive burials. And then is, notorious for other things. That's a place where you're going to stick, it's going to stick to you no matter what you do. And so the best advice is, really don't, there's so many other ways that you can begin your career of investigating. And I've said it before, you don't know what goes on in that cemetery when no one's there, or when you're not there. There are practitioners who need to use the cemetery or, gather things from the cemetery for their work. And you don't know whether, some guy just finished some big ritual yesterday, and here you come with your app and you're recording on your phone and all, and guess what, so, because
Yeah,
what he
provoking and
produced may
laughing
be
at
wrong.
them because you
Yeah,
don't
and
feel anything
laughing,
at the time. You don't feel
or
anything.
they're not talking. Yeah, I don't
That's
feel anything,
right.
can't hear anything. Well, they're, I mean, seriously, if somebody's going to follow you home, they're not going to talk to you, even if it's a ghost or a human, so. But people want to go on, it seems like especially, Halloween is especially a problem for that. And, we were talking about the origins of it, which we're going to continue to do because we've only got it. It's a Celtic holiday. It's mostly associated with Celts. It is for the ancient Celts. It's New Year's, or it's the last day of the year before the new year begins on November 1st. But they only had two seasons. They had summer and they had winter. And the end of their winter, or the end of their year of the cycle, was sowing. And so all of what we get, not everything, there are some other things that have been added later, but all of what we get basically about the folklore and the origins of it comes from Celtic beliefs and traditions. The jack-o'-lantern is made from a pumpkin, which is a later adaptation of, they used to hollow out turnips. And if you follow that particular thread back, it goes back to a man who is cursed by the devil to wander through the world trying to find his way to heaven because he was locked out of heaven. And we can talk about that, the full story, on another night. But so everything basically goes back into lore. And, like I always say about folklore, it's because, it continues to exist and it's passed down because somewhere at the very bottom of it, there's a kernel of truth. And we all know weird things happen. But the question of, whether it is, like a night for demons and ghosts, and well, obviously, are spirits more active? Of course it is, because, our world changes a little bit. It briefly changes. And, as according to the traditions of Samhain, when time crosses that between one year and another, and it's making that transit, and this is true at New Year's too, really, but especially so when you're dealing with Samhain, it exists in neither. It's neither present or next year. It's not this year, the old year. It's not the new year. It is transiting, and so you're in an in-between space where anything can happen. And probably the best known tradition of the Celts is that the dead come back, and they are allowed to walk the earth again, visit their relatives, take out their vengeance, haunt, and kill people too as well. And that goes back to carrying lighted turnips or gourds and wearing masks and making yourself unidentifiable to whoever the ghost might be. But we, as I mean, it's probably the most celebrated holiday by witches. It's
Yeah.
the big celebration of the year. And so, but like on any of the Sabbaths or the cross quarter days, they're doing rituals. You may not know any, but there are people throughout the world doing rituals, participating in celebrations, etc. So is it easy to get in, is it easier then to get in touch with spirits and demons? Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you just, if you're a person of a magical mind or a solitary, you can even sit out there, sit outside and just feel the energy and everything that you feel about, the season and the way that the night feels, and, the going down, the turning in of the year. You can sense all of that. And it's because it's very, the whole thing is very evocative, but it's because also there are a lot of people doing things to come into contact. They're doing ritual, they're celebrating, they're
On the
calling on,
same day, the same
right,
time.
and all across the world. So it's like a moving, it's moving with, I guess, the time zones, or with night, you would really say, it's moving with night, because the Celts actually, they told time, their day was basically from sunset to sunset. And so, that's even more evocative, or more, significant to the holiday itself. So they would begin their celebrations at night. And so, it's the whole idea of that, and the whole idea that you can tap into this energy. And you can do the same thing on June 21st, which is the summer equinox. Or, in spring. You can do it whenever masses of people, pagans, neo-pagans, Wiccans, and true witches, are, celebrating these old holidays, and, calling out to the god and the goddess, and whatever other demigods, or, whoever your thing is, Lucifer, or, the voodoo, whatever. They all flux, and they kind of like overlap. And so if you're going out there like some idiot, like the idiot you described on Halloween, all of that is swirling around you. You can't see it. You can't feel it. You may not even know a witch. You may not even know anything too much about Halloween, beyond black and orange, or pumpkins and, whatever candy. But you're going to become that, you're going to become victimized unless you know what to do, unless you know how to protect yourself. You can use, if you're smart, if you know what you're doing, you're a seasoned investigator like you, Bernadine, you can tap into that energy and use it if you seek to do it properly. But to just say, hey, I'm going to sit out here with an EVP and see if somebody talks to me. Well, something's going to talk to you.
If you're looking for a thrill, you may get more than that.
Right. I mean, they're all awake on that night. They're all feeling that tug of, and when I say they, I mean spirit is awake that night. It feels, that it's interacting. It feels all the interactions with it. And so it's being drawn into contact with the living. And so is it a good night to do an investigation? Yeah, if you know what the hell you're doing. But if you're just out having fun, running around with an app and a digital recorder and kicking over tombstones and stuff, well, you get what's coming to you. Your karma is going to be terrible. For instance, it will haunt you until you go into your grave. And that's kind of what I think you were just describing. It will haunt you until they put you in the ground. And sometimes after that, it will stay until your corpse is just completely gone. So, I mean, it's exciting. And you need to know that. You don't have to dwell on the fact that, hey, but if you don't know what you're doing, admit it to yourself. I mean, seriously, one of the most frequently carried out, most frequent rituals is the dumb supper. And there are different varieties of it. The dumb supper can be prepared by a solitary. Now, this is necromancy. And, I'm not going to go into all the steps. And I mention it in my book, but I don't really give the steps out. You can find them, but do you want to do it? It's the idea of waking up the dead. And usually it's done to contact one specific person. And it involves preparation up to sometimes 13, maybe 30 days before the day you're going to do the ritual. And most times it's done on Halloween. You're preparing, you're fasting, you're preparing foods, okay, literally real food. When you prepare for it, you're actually ready to do the ritual. There's this whole thing of doing everything backward with your back turned, because basically you're going back to drawing out the dead to you. If the ritual is done correctly, if you have, prepared everything, when you turn around and you sit down at the table that you have prepared for you and whomever it is that you have called, and you look up, they will be there. So you basically have called the dead, so it's an extremely, and it's done differently, like in voodoo. And some people call dumb suppers things that are really not that are really more like commemorations. And we're gonna have feasts, or we're gonna have a feast, we're gonna have dinner and honor the dead. But the real dumb supper involves a lot of hard work and a lot of intestinal fortitude in the practitioner. So it's not something to be engaged in lightly. So consider that some people, like, roughly a third of the people that are trying it out have no, okay. The other 2/3, they know what they're doing, but they've got all this energy going around. So, you go out there, you're in this current, you're going to pick it up, and guess what? It's going to stick to you like dirt on the shoe. So, I mean, it's fascinating, but it's dangerous.
Right. And please, people, leave the black cats alone on Halloween.
Oh, yes, because
isn't
recently
that like a ritual, also blood ritual sacrifice? Even if you're doing it because you're a crazy person and you think it's fun.
Yeah, well,
you're spilling blood.
Yes, anywhere
from a
that's
black cat on Halloween.
Yeah.
Remember
exactly.
that time we went to New Orleans and they had dead black cats all over the French
Well, they
Quarter?
just shot one. Yeah, and they just shot one the other day. I'm really upset about it. It was like yesterday I heard it on the news. Somebody just came up and did a pot shot at a black cat. So it's starting already. Crazy. Black cats, black dogs, they really get a bad rap. But the black cat has been associated, with Halloween. For centuries, actually all cats, but the black cat is sort of like an American thing. It kind of came, with the colonization of America, because in Europe, a lot of the things that they use the cat for here, they substitute with a reptile or something, and the guest is if just ask him to hold on briefly so we can finish our thoughts, Jeff. But killing of cats or anything, spilling its blood, no matter what you're doing, it's drawing everything to you. So go out on the most potent night of the year where there's a lot of people doing evil stuff, don't like people stuff, good stuff, being stupid and trying to contact, knowing not knowing how to do it, and being in cemeteries. Go out there and kill something. Go out there and spread blood. Even when you wash that blood off of you, they still see it. And when I say they, if you're spilling blood, you're probably doing it for some particularly bad spirits with the hope of, I guess, getting in contact or asking them to do something for you. So remember that, it's going to stick to you. You can't see it, but they can see it and they can smell it. So, which is why, Dean, when we, they find places, that are notorious, let's say for, maybe there was black magic done here, and black magic is sort of like a header there. You know what I mean? If you go into a place like that, you immediately can feel, that feeling. And once a place is polluted with a sacrifice, even if it's done, I hate to say it in jest, but even if it's done in jest, that's it. You walk into that, and you have to plan for that. That's a whole different ball game for the investigator and the occultist and anybody that's going into that kind of situation. But as for, targeting black cats, yeah, unfortunately, and every year that I've had an outdoor cat, I don't have an outdoor cat, black cat. All of mine are inside. Every year that I've had one, I've taken them in really 2 or 3 days before, because people go looking for those animals. They go looking. Mm-hmm. Joe, I don't know, Joe. Is he?
I just I just told Brennan he can call right back.
Yeah, that's fine.
He was dropped from the line by accident.
Okay, that's great. Well, we'll be wrapping up here. But yeah, people do that, and here in America, what do they want a black cat for? Well, they're going to throw it in boiling water, right? Alive with all of the other things, and skin it. And, if you're a real witch, you're a real serious practitioner, you know what you're doing. I don't even have to tell them. People are just, they're doing something with it. And season of autumn and winter where we have different interactions with the dead. The first of which is, the archangels, etc. Gabriel, Michael taking. I think we might have somebody on the line. Taking.
Brennan, are you there?
I sure am.
Oh, I was
Okay.
hoping we didn't lose you
Hang on
again.
1 second. Yeah, we're going to lose you again. Hang on 1 second, Brennan.
No problem.
And then we go through October into Samhain, and the other, we have the voodoo festivals, Fete Gede, honoring the Gede, and then into the All Saints Day on November 1st, and then All Souls Day on November 2nd, and that progresses to us too, the 21st of December and the darkest night of the year. So you're entering a really dark time. You don't want to do it without knowing what you're doing. You don't want to walk through that and try and interact with anything that is stirred up during that period or called up, or brought back without knowing what you're doing. So you go into a cemetery on Halloween for fun and games. We can't stop you, but leave the digital recorder and the ghost app at home. Leave everything at home, please. You can take pictures, but don't say, "Hey, can I take a picture of you?" Hey, because they might like you and they'll go home with you. So there you go. I mean, and we'll talk about this throughout the month coming up to Halloween. So Bernadine, why don't you bring our guest on, please?
Hey, Brennan.
Hey there. How's it going?
We're doing good. Sorry we lost you for a minute.
It's all right. Technology will do that.
Yeah.
Joe too will do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Joe, the guy. He's just a walking Mercury retrograde. Some past life thing. Go ahead, Dina. I'm sorry. I'm going to jump in.
Well, I have part of your bio or about you up. I'll read it real quick. Eileen have put it up on the site. Brennan Storr is a writer, research, and co-host of the Ghost Story Guys podcast, former atheist turned believer. He has been subject to an accidental exorcism, encountered shadow people and other facets of the paranormal world, all while desperately trying to avoid them. If there is a such thing as a reluctant paranormal investigator, he is that. Beginning in late October, Brennan will also be hosting the weekly show, The Call, on 92.5 Stoke FM. You can find more about him at www.ghoststoryguys.com or look for the Ghost Story Guys on Facebook. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Brennan.
Well, I like to say I'm the world's most boring man. That's why I try to run the opposite direction from the paranormal things, but they find me anyways. So I'm a writer and researcher. I'm from the west coast of Canada. Specifically, I'm living on Vancouver Island in the town and city of Victoria. And last year in August, I released a book, A Strange Little Place, which was the collected paranormal history of my small mountain town, my hometown. And most of that history was unknown even to me. I was started out as a bit of a lark. As I said in my bio there, I was mostly an atheist. I didn't really believe in any of this stuff. And well, then it started happening to me, and I had to reevaluate that pretty fast.
Were you an atheist in the sense that you just didn't believe in spirits, or were you against religion, or what was were you raised in a faith?
I was raised Catholic, yes, or my grandmother tried her best, I should say. And from there, I just asked questions, and I found that the church didn't have the answers I was looking for, didn't have any answers for me. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, I was just very much, materialist, maybe better than atheist, in that I believed in the things I saw. That old line about, the world is what is in front of me, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and all these things. Mm-hmm. So when I started writing the book, it was more, again, just I like telling ghost stories at parties. They were always a lot of fun. People seemed to enjoy them. And then I saw a shadow person, and I jumped on the Google, and I thought, what is a shadow shaped like a person doing in my office? And it turned out it was a whole thing. And from there, my world was very, very different.
Wow. I was reading that at your site, that you work in the most haunted building, I think, or one of the oldest, most haunted buildings in Victoria, or at the time you did. I don't know. I jumped
Yeah,
in and
actually,
out.
I'm calling you from there now. We have our
Oh,
little studio here for the Ghost Story guys in that building. It's situated just off what's called Bastion Square, which is now my co-host Ian is the local historian, so I'm sure he'll shoot me if I get this wrong, but pardon, best choice of words, but I'm sure he'll give me heck if I get it wrong. But I believe this is the site of the old gallows and the old I believe, prison. And so, as I understand it, there are still people buried under the square, or at least there were until recent history. And so it's a densely haunted area. And
I'm sorry. My cat, my cat came in. I'm giving you sound effects. I'm sorry, but we were talking about cats and she just knocked over everything. So go
my cat
ahead.
too.
I'm sorry, Brennan.
But yeah, so it's a very haunted area, and of course I didn't think too much about it. But the company I was working for at the time, we were on the second floor, and I really started to notice that the building did not like having folks in it past a certain point. You find that the
Wow.
darkness thickened, and rooms that you could previously see into, well lit, I should say, rooms, they were dark, but they were lit from the outside from the streetlights. You would look and realize you couldn't see in there anymore,
Wow.
and then it would pass. So it's a very, very, very densely haunted part of town, and this building appears to have at least one full-time resident. So I try not to bug him too much. We're up on a different floor now, and whatever it is seems to appreciate that.
Mm. Yeah. They know you're there. So I guess you kind of, are you saying like you went out and experienced these weird things that kind of challenged what you believed in, then you went back to the strange little town of the title, your hometown, and began to collect? Or have you always heard had you always heard stories when you were growing up, etc.?
No, I heard the odd story. My family were Italian, so we always would. I like to say,
Hey, we're
What?
Italians.
there you go.
You scared the hell out of me. I'm sorry.
I have impulse control disorder
Yeah,
sometimes.
but don't
Sorry.
do that. We're both Italian. We're both Italian. So just so you'll know, Brennan. So
Oh,
hey,
fantastic!
Yes.
I'm among friends.
yeah, all right. Mob
But
movie
yeah,
stuff here. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
exactly. No, pardon me. So yeah, we would tell ghost stories around the dinner table, and not many, but my mother would talk about the house she grew up in and all the things that she experienced there. So I would hear those, but nothing else. And so when I got the idea to do this, I would just use my vacation time from work. I was the office manager for a small consulting company, and I would just I'd go back to Revelstoke for a week or so at a time, interview people. And it was eye-opening for me because I'd never thought I would see it myself in this life, knocking on someone's door and saying, "So tell me about the headless man who drifts across the river."
That's too funny. And I guess they didn't think it either. I guess there's some people who say, "Hey, I know you didn't believe in all that. What are you crazy now?" So
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I like to say there's a few relationships I had to leave behind, over the course of writing the book, and obviously since releasing it last year, my public profiles increased considerably, and now with the Ghost Story Guys podcast as well. So I sort of had to accept that nope, things have changed, and some folks don't like that. And that's fine. I don't like it much, anyways.
Well, that was interesting because when I was reading through your bio and stuff, was looking for the name of your little town, and I didn't see it. Are you trying to? I mean, I guess you do in the book name it, but are you trying to keep it like under wraps or something? Because we know how it is. As soon as something, gets even a little bit out there, there's just pouncing on it. You've got these full of paranormal investigators and paranormal shows. So are you trying to keep it, let's say, undercover, or am I just totally wrong?
No, we the name is definitely repeated in the book. The town is Revelstoke. It's a town of about 7,500 people on the Trans-Canada Highway, which is the main highway that runs sort of from coast to coast. And it's a secluded place. Again, about 7,500 people. In my lifetime, I don't believe the population has ever risen above 10,000. The main employers are a railroad and a sawmill. It's a very blue collar little place, or I should say, it was. It's had a big demographic change in recent years, but no, it's very no nonsense place. So people were reluctant to open up. Well, it's interesting to
Right.
say about publicity drawing people, though. I've actually not encountered that, and I expected it because, and this may sound kooky, but I feel as though Revelstoke itself, the land or whatever you want to say, is very resistant to attracting attention, and so I truly think that we haven't really seen a jump in paranormal tourism, and I don't think we will. I just have this suspicion that the town is doing whatever it can to
Mhm.
avoid attracting further attention. The interest has sort of come and gone, and the book sold reasonably well, but the town itself, we're not seeing that influx that I'd hoped for, because it's a great little place. I was hoping to drive some people there, but it hasn't happened yet, although I suppose it could.
Yeah, maybe they don't want the attention the town with Mothman has,
Yeah, and that big old statue that they put in the middle of Mount Pleasant,
Yeah. It's
Very
like
subtle.
kid-
That's
a big thing.
art,
it. Yeah. I feel it's like just I want to say a quality of the not the people of the town, but if you want to call it the spirit of the town or whatever is there. I feel as though it's just resistant to that, and it's definitely an active place still. I was back there a couple weeks ago and saw something very strange, and it just occurred to me, yeah, this is still an active place. It's not, when I say haunted history, that goes back to at least the 30s, the information I found, but a lot of the stories are still happening. And of course, based on what I saw, it looks like they don't plan on slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's kind of like New Orleans, and I want to kind of go back to, if he doesn't mind, talking about the shadow entities or the shadows that you've encountered.
Sure.
After Katrina, hit New Orleans for about a year, maybe 2 years, even though all the electricity basically had been restored, as people were coming back and tours were up again and all, there was just and I always call it a palpable darkness. There was just an oppressive, palpable, you could see it and feel it, shadow, darkness. And a lot of it, I guess, had to do in our case with the fact that we do have Bourbon Street. We do have all the ghost tours. We do have, we're just a center of energy of all kind, and so our city was abandoned, except for a few people, in Katrina. And so a lot of that, those spirits that usually get fed, they didn't have anything to feed on. They didn't have that energy. So, and so it resulted in sort of like a citywide type of, just this oppressive shadow hanging over it. So, and it's similar to what you talked about in the room, darkening. I've seen that happen too, but, so, I mean, when did that begin? Have you seen them? Have you seen people as well, or just, the sort of, like sapping all the light and energy, out
Oh
of the
no,
room?
I've definitely seen them in human form. Although I'd love to chat, at least go back to New Orleans for a moment, because I was there in 2008 and again in 2015.
Mm.
And 2015, I stayed in, and I'm probably mentioning the name, pardon me, Treme.
Yeah.
Treme, yeah. So I stayed there because
don't do that again, okay, Brennan?
that's
Don't do that again, and don't do it now, okay? Because I mean, we have the highest murder rate, crime rate in the country, so
yes,
don't do
ma'am.
that.
Well, I stayed in an Airbnb there, and I was told, because I'm very much a night person. I like to walk at night, take photos, and the Uber driver who took me to my Airbnb said, "No, you don't do that here." And then the Uber driver who took me from Treme to the Quarter said the same thing. He said, "No, you just don't do that here."
Yeah.
And so, but what I noticed in Treme especially was how the street lights seemed to not light anything up, but rather illuminate how much darkness there was.
Right.
That was the sense I got from there. And I had planned to I was there for a conference, and I had planned to spend the entire week I was in Louisiana, in the city, but I found there was this very, very, as you described, this very palpable feeling of darkness. I felt like I was walking on eggshells the whole time. It felt like walking across white paper that at random intervals has holes underneath it. You just fall into it and disappear.
Yeah.
And so I thought, no, this is probably not great. But then, of course, I ended up renting a car and exploring. And then I ran into a haunting at, is it Laurel Valley? Near
Wait,
Thibodeau?
I'm sorry. You cut out there. What is it?
Oh, sorry. Laurel Valley near Thibodeau?
Yeah, in Thibodeau. Yeah, I've seen that. Dean, you know that. I think that's an old plantation or the remnants of an old plantation or a cotton farm. They have the slave houses, I think. Is that what you're talking about, Brennan?
Yeah. I had, coincidentally, I'd had this dream before I'd ever heard of Thibodeau or Laurel Valley. I had a dream where I was driving and I came around a corner and there's a farm and a road that stretches off into the distance. There are more particulars, but I won't bore your listeners with them. But what's fascinating is in that dream, I was hit with the feeling I typically get in a haunted area, which is a very pronounced sense of dizziness. Well, as it turns out, I dreamed of the road, of this Laurel Valley Road near Thibodeau. When I went there in 2015, I realized it was exactly the place I had dreamed of. And I had exactly that feeling when I got there, that just sense of pressure in my chest and dizziness.
Wow.
And I thought it must be a very powerful place if it can make itself known all the way from that side of the world to mine.
Absolutely. You must have some sort of a connection to it. Because in what you're describing, you experienced in the city, and Dean, you'll probably agree with me. It's still there. But Katrina, New Orleans was kind of like, and I won't go too far into it, but we kind of look at it. Those of us who are from here, she's like our mother. She's like a living being, and they will be celebrating 300 years next year. But she basically began to die after Katrina, and that was one of the first things, where when all the people were gone. And there wasn't that energy to feed on in the French Quarter. I think it went into other areas, and what we're seeing now is, again, nobody go to the Treme. I don't care whoever comes across this, like a year from now, stay out of the Treme. It doesn't, and that happens because of that HBO show, and people think, oh, it's wonderful.
Course, right.
New Orleans, yeah, gumbo and jazz and all. Bullshit. Okay. You want to walk, then I'll set you up with a tour group. Okay. You want to go into the cemeteries, which you need a tour guide now. Seriously, you are taking your life in your hands because it's like the Wild Wild West down here right now.
No,
and
absolutely.
I can't, and I kind of think that, that's still a symptom, in unfortunately, to me, I feel like she's really dead or she's really dying. And so, all of that feeling of, just gloom and everything, it's still there. And I don't think it's ever going to leave, really. I don't think it's ever going to leave. But if you want a better trip, then contact me. I'll set you up.
I appreciate
Dean,
that. Yeah,
I will, definitely. I know, Dean, you have some questions over there for Brennan.
Oh, sure.
Brennan, whenever you were in New Orleans, did you have, I think you went in the French Quarter, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
While you were there, did it feel like your energy was being zapped?
I wouldn't say it felt like my energy was being zapped, but I'm very, how should I put it? I felt very cautious. Both times I've been in New Orleans, I have encountered someone who is involved with a missing person within 24 hours of arrival.
Wow.
And yeah, both times. The first time was a young man who'd gone missing from a bar the night before and gotten into someone's car to buy drugs and not come back. And then the second time was a young man who had gone missing after his family had dropped him off at a motel by the highway. I won't get more specific because I think that case is still open. But I had just sort of become, I'm not involved, but meet people who are directly involved with these things. And that was a very clear indication to me of how careful I needed to be. So I never felt like I was being zapped, but I definitely felt on edge. And I met a Pentecostal minister who was part of the conference I was at. We were there for the International Remote Viewing Association conference in 2015. And when I told him, I said, this place feels cursed, something to that effect. he immediately snapped his fingers and he said, yes. He said, as soon as I got off the plane, I felt it. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but he said, that's exactly what it is. It feels like this place, as he put it, is, I guess, as much as I hate to say it, to use your words, dying.
Yeah.
And it very much felt that. So I didn't feel I was being zapped, and I don't think I had any unusual paranormal encounters in the city, aside from just that very pronounced sense of where to go, where not to go. When I was in Treme, is that right? Is that pronouncing it right?
Treme. Mm-hmm.
Treme,
No, that's
okay.
right.
I'd be standing standing in the porch light of the little house I was renting, or the house where I was renting a room, and it very much felt like an island amidst some very, very threatening darkness, and so it was not as you say, I was very cautious to take Ubers here and there, and I thought, yeah, this is not for this little small town guy.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Did you go into any of the voodoo shops?
Oh no, ma'am. Like I said, I tend not to seek these things out. They find me anyways. So I don't do investigations, for example. I don't do Ouija boards or seances, things like that. I stumble into this stuff. It seems to find me well enough without me looking for it.
Well, maybe you have a higher calling, and it's to get people's stories told.
Well,
They can be told. Yeah. So because
Yeah,
their stories need to be told.
That's it, and I certainly enjoy it. That's doing this kind of thing here, having these kinds of conversations. That is what I find very fulfilling, because I feel like we're getting at a deeper truth, and that is just fascinating to me. I like to think of a strange little place, which is obviously still available for sale, and you should buy 5 copies for your friends and family, because but that was sort of my spring.
Buy a copy.
Oh, well, I think we sent a copy. It's just that it appears to have gotten lost in the mail.
Oh,
Yeah,
you sent it to Dean, not to me, though. Yeah.
Yeah, he sent it, but that was in the
No,
time of we were having hurricane problems and things, so we had mess
buy one.
ups with the mail.
Fair enough.
I'm an author
yes.
too, so I know how that, even that little $6 check, if you wanted to be like, wow, somebody bought it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Smash words, yay. But yeah, I mean, New Orleans' history is it's magical, and it's deep, and it's it's a total different feeling. She truly is alive, and I do describe her in my own book, but she truly is. And a lot of people say, well, I've been down here for 15 years. Well, you've been down here for 15 years. That's it, because you're not born here. We're not so narrow-minded about that, but it's something with, the connection with the people who are born here, and, the people who are latecomers. And there are some people that she just adopts because people like you, because she needs to tell a story to them. She needs to, their life needs to encounter what she is. She's barely on life support now, unfortunately, but she has a history in the past that also needs to be preserved. And, Dean talked about the voodoo shops, that's all for the trade and everything, but there is a magical current that's constantly going on. And people have been having like more weird encounters, I guess. I don't know, Dean, I know you've heard some just weird stuff happening to them since Hurricane Katrina. And not just the Saints winning the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, the Superdome had a flood and wipe out the voodoo and all the curses, and so they could win. Okay, and it still took them years. Okay, a couple of years, but anyway, off the same thing. But you know what I mean? It's so steeped in history and mystery and magic. So she may have something to tell you that will result in another book, solving a crime. Something like that. So, I mean, it's good that when you visit, you have your ears and eyes open to her.
Oh, absolutely. And I hope to get back there one of these days. I know I seem to, again, I'm speaking of places which are maybe nearing or on their, I shouldn't say on their way out, that feels disrespectful, but which are maybe transforming into something else. I was recently in an abandoned, or rather semi-abandoned, tuberculosis hospital complex. And this is 191 acres of in its heyday, there were 40 buildings,
Mhm.
and they're trying to make something new out of it. They're trying to turn it into some kind of resort development, and it has the same feeling in that the land is done. The land does not want anything else here. It's time to let it go, and they keep gamely soldiering on, but it very much feels like it wants its story told, and then it wants to be left alone.
Right. Yeah. And that's there. I actually was watching Ghost Adventures, Bernadine. Mark that down. It was like last week, and they actually had a new episode, I think, or a recent episode where there was a similar thing, a tuberculosis hospital up in Minnesota, and that's why I said once they find out, it's like bloodhounds. Once something comes into the public, but actually they were the first to investigate places like that. And I've often said, like of Waverly Hills and other places, that even if no one had ever found them or ever went into them again, that they would be haunted, all by themselves. In other words, it would just be a haunted place, whether it was interacting with living humans or not. And so I understand what you're talking about. Even about the building, that you're in, it's like, even if you never experience it, it just sits there and it's haunted, and, it decays, and then the land is haunted as well, and somebody comes along and builds something on it.
Yeah, I'm very much a proponent of the idea that the haunting is part of the land more than it is the history of a building.
Mhm.
I tend to drift off a bit into nap time when people start asking me if someone died in a certain place, because I think that may be part of the picture, but I don't think it's the whole picture. With Revelstoke, for example, I think there is something very unique about the land. I think it is, maybe you could argue, a thin spot, if there are such things between one world and another, and I think things drift through there.
Mhm.
But I don't think it is because of the rough history or because so and so was murdered in X spot. I just think it is a very unique patch of land, and I think sometimes things pass through. And in fact, there is a house here in Victoria where I believe one such thin spot is located, and it's actually one of the spots where, if I spend too much time near there, the shadows come to visit. And I stopped going there about 2 years ago now, because whatever is there quite literally follows you home.
Mhm.
And it's just not a good time for anyone.
No, it's not. It'll come and it'll stay and it'll do whatever it was doing, only it'll do it in your house. And then Bernadine and I teach a lot about the problem of, spirit pollution, where
Right.
It's like the rubbernecking of the spirit realm, where their energy is good and, they're all feeding. It's like, you see a wreck on the side of the interstate and you got to slow down and look. Well, they do the same. And they're like, well, what's all that going over there? And then you attract more spirits and more. And eventually you attract something usually bad, that's like, look at all
Right.
of this and I'm going to go, suck up all this energy or whatever. I mean, that's a simplified way of saying it. So you can get, we were just talking before you came on about stuff sticking to you and attaching to you and coming home to your house, and then your paranormal team or whoever is, you're investigating your own house the next thing you know. So, but so many people don't listen. They don't listen. They think they know. And then some people want to be haunted. So, it's a weird thing. But
I think the people who, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think these people who want to be haunted, I think it's because it's not real to them. It's they want it to be real in a way that's kind of like entertainment. It's fun. But I when I started this book, a shadow person actually touched me, and it led to the bleakest period of depression I had endured since I was a teenager. It lasted for 2 weeks, and during that time, I felt like I was dragging around a lead weight. I felt like there was something hanging on me, would not let go, and it really didn't go until I had this bizarre. I had an argument with my wife. I just sort of provoked an argument, which is not me. I'm a pretty mild dude, but it was this ridiculous, unnecessary fight. And after that, it was almost like puncturing a boil. It was like this thing had wanted to produce this buildup of emotion so it could feed on it. And once it had fed, it sort of left.
Right.
And then I had sort of this chance encounter with a shaman in Vancouver, which is over on the mainland. And bizarrely, he told me that I had these essentially holes in my aura. He said I had the wrong spirit in me. So he performed a very compartmentalized version of a Native American cleansing ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I've seen the shadows again, but they've never been able to get close. And that's
good.
Yes,
That's
it's a
good to
relief.
hear.
But
But yeah, because Dean and I have experience with that. Like I've written about them, and I call them fear manifest. They manifest and they grow in environments where, just like you're talking about, in which case you brought it home, but in negative environments everywhere where these haunted buildings that people go into, these haunted locations that people do, but people who are not even involved in the paranormal can encounter these, and they grow into mimicking humanity. They basically mimic us, and that's why so many times they're seen as people. And so many people want to call them ghosts. They are not ghosts. They are not the discarnate energy of a dead human, and they didn't exist until the fear and the anger and the negativity got so strong that it basically birthed it. And it's just happened to be birthed in your house, or in an office building or whatever. It's the same thing, and it produces so much fear, because across the board, everyone who's encountered shadow entities, if they're being honest and true, about their own experiences, they are afraid of them. And it's because it is fear. It's not like preying on your fear. It's fear manifest, and you're encountering it. So, that, I don't know if, that helps to explain, the argument that you were having with your wife. It would have gotten worse, though, between you and her, if you hadn't crossed the path of the shaman. Dean, you agree with that?
Yes, because spirits need energy to manifest, and the way they gather that energy is either through electronics, or mostly is from the friction in the home. Mm-hmm. High anxiety, kids that are ADD, animals that are hyper, arguing, yep, fighting, anything that causes the friction of anxiety gives them more energy, you see. And right. I don't know if you ever came across this in your own home once it followed you home, but sometimes they mimic our voices. Yeah. Like your wife will hear your voice, or you'll hear her voice next to you. You look around, she's not there.
Interesting. I've heard of this. We did not experience this, thankfully, but I've definitely heard of that.
Yes. Yeah. I've experienced it personally, and a lot of my clients have also. Still hard to explain, but it
people
happens.
have, go ahead. I'm sorry, Brennan.
Oh, no, pardon me. I was going to say, we've started smudging our house, which we've found really helps. Mm-hmm. It wasn't something we'd started doing until, I want to say, about 2 years ago, when mm-hmm. my wife ended up in the hospital with kidney stone. But the night before that happened, I woke up from a dream, or I woke up, it must have been a dream. But in the dream, I was laying in bed. I woke up because I heard movement in the living room. So I got up out of bed, turned on the bedside table, and I thought, that could be one of the cats. It must be one of the cats. But I walked towards the bedroom door anyways, just to be sure. And then I heard our cat, Chewy, I heard her bell in the spare room. And I thought, okay, that movement is not her. And just as I had that thought, I heard this awful old woman's laughter. And in the dream, I charged the door. And then I woke up, of course, back in bed. And then that day, my wife ended up in the hospital with a kidney stone.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, so after she was better, after she had healed, we had a friend of ours come in and who's a Wiccan. She came in and smudged the whole house for us. And it was such a difference in just the feel of the place. We hadn't even noticed that it felt one way or the other, but our friends, the energy in the spare bedroom was very, very powerful. And since then, I've been smudging the house myself intermittently. And we've definitely stood in there in the same place. It just seems to collect and kind of stagnate, I guess is the word.
Yeah, that's where it would go, to the least used place. You know, whether it's a basement or an attic or a spare room. You know, people often say, "What's up at the basement?" Well, it's, you know, to get away from you or to gather strength. You know, sometimes it's where they'll go into the dark, into the mud, you know, buried down there. It's good that I mean, natural remedies like sage that you're talking about, but also vinegar in the environment, eating more garlic and onions when you feel, you know, this oppressiveness, bringing things like tulips and lilies, you know, bud plants, plants that come from a bud like amaryllis or paper whites, bringing them into the house, don't let them die, but, you know,
Right.
interchanging them. Those are all things which you can try if you feel, you know, if you feel this coming back. But I would say that probably your wife's kidney stone was her body basically processing that and getting this out of her, you know. So that's that. I mean, people who say no, it's a medical, but in many ways the body, you know, the spirit forces things out of us. So, you know, some people get ill and then they get better or whatever. So, you know, that's probably what happened to her, or I would say anyway, I'd
Well,
venture to
yeah,
say.
usually in an exorcism, when the spirit or the demon finally comes out, doesn't the person always vomit?
Vomits, or yeah, or expectorates, you know, you get excrement, or, you know, in some form or another
It
it
comes
comes
out
out.
one way. Yeah.
But, you know, Brennan, you like to tell ghost stories and stuff, so why don't you tell us some of the stuff about the strange little town, some of the good ones, in
Sure.
addition to your own, what you're experiencing right now, or, you know, some that you really like. So
Okay, sure, absolutely. So, well, I'll let you in on I've only really talked about this on our show, but
mm,
when I was in Revelstoke earlier this year, there was a night where I was sitting at the house I was staying in, and thought, I should go for a drive. Again, I'm very much a night guy, but I'm also I like to think at least, very attuned to types of darkness. I'm
mhm,
very aware that there are some nights where you're not meant to go outside, just because you can tell by there's just a quality to the air. I can't even really explain what it is that I'm picking up on. But so that night it was about 12:30, and I thought, if I don't go for a drive, I'm not going to be able to sleep. So I got in the car, despite the fact that it was extremely dark outside. Went for a spin. Now, again, Revelstoke's a very small place, and 12:30 at night, there's not a bunch going on. So as I was out, I saw maybe one or two people. And then I remembered there was a particular picture I wanted to try and get from this bridge above the railway. So I drove out to the railway. And as I pulled a U-turn, pulled over, and I was just about to get out of the car when this voice in my head said, maybe you shouldn't get out of the car tonight. Tonight's just a good night to stay in the car. So I thought, okay, I'll stay in the car. So I pulled down the hill, and as I was coming down to the bottom of the hill, I noticed there was, I looked to the left, and to the left is towards the industrial park. Nothing, there's a line of trees, nothing particularly interesting. But I saw something. Now, typically, when I see something that I think is spooky, my brain first says, aha, I saw something spooky. And then my rational brain kicks in and goes, no, you saw X, Y, or Z. And usually rational brain is right. He's kind of a killjoy, that guy, but he's good that way.
mhm,
What was interesting on this occasion was that the first thing that popped into my head was, that was the shadow of a tree. Don't worry about it. Keep driving.
mhm.
And I thought, wait, was it? Because it looked like it moved. And what I had seen was, it looked like two very long things, like two shadow trees, we'll say, but
Mhm,
joined in the middle at the top. And I felt like it stepped back behind the trees
mhm,
when I became aware of it. I felt like I was looking up at a very long pair of legs, like 10 feet tall. And I feel like my vision gapped out as soon as I realized I was looking at something unusual. As soon as I hit the midpoint, everything just went away. And so I wanted to make a U-turn because, again, I make the trip again, and then I can say to myself, you know what? I didn't really see the thing I thought I saw, and I can go back home. But I couldn't make myself turn around because I was afraid. And I realize this now. I was afraid that I would not be able to duplicate it.
Mm-hmm.
That I would then have to realize and sort of face up to the fact that I just saw something that was at least 10 feet tall step behind some trees as it became aware of me. And I just wasn't sure how to make room in my world for that.
Creepy. That
Yeah,
sounds
so
like the night walkers. I don't know if we've talked about it with Nick Redfern before, but the ones, those white things that are just like legs with like a little round head at the top, and they're supposedly captured in Yosemite forest, walking on some. That's what that sounds like. But it also sounds a lot like the Native American, folklore of that area. I'm not an expert, but I have heard that in the northwestern U.S. that there are things that appear like that. They're not Bigfoot, or they're not animal in nature. They're totally spirits, and they're usually attached to certain areas. But they have stories of the big tall ones, and so you may have seen that. But it's interesting that you're seeing a lot of this. The whole idea of it is, it was like it's making up for the time when you didn't believe in it.
I guess so. I mean, most of the time I sense, I don't feel, but there are times when this happens, and I find myself going, okay, well, if I repeat this story in polite company, this is going to seem strange. I promised my wife I won't come to the dinner party and start talking about ghosts.
And 3 hours later, everybody got the
understand.
ghost app out on the phone, and everybody's looking at the ghost radar. There's one behind you. Oh, it's over there. Gosh, yeah, no, we know, and we're polite people. We believe in all of that, but we're polite most of the time.
Absolutely.
Dean is most of the time.
Can't be played all the time. There's not fun.
No.
But
no.
So I'm trying to think of another great story. Actually, it's from. There's two stories told me by the same man. He's a very, very no nonsense fella. I want to say he's in his 70s now. He's been a horse trainer all his life, and very, very much a straight talker, straight shooter kind of guy. And back in, I want to say 73, it's been a while, so my dates may be a bit fuzzy, but I believe it was in the 70s. This man was working on the ferry service that runs south of Revelstoke. South of Revelstoke is it's all the Columbia River, but that there were a bunch of communities that were flooded out in the 60s when the U.S. started damming up the Columbia. So there's a lot of submerged communities down there. So the ferry was on its last run of the night. There were no passengers. It was just the four-man crew, and three of them were on deck. One, the person who told me the story, was in the I want to say the engine room doing some paperwork. When the other three men came in, absolutely panicked, and they said they had seen a black shadow, roughly the size of a football field, flying about 100 feet above the ship. They said it just drifted above them. They all saw it, and then all of a sudden it was gone in a shot and a flash of blue light.
Wow. I hope Joe is listening. Joe's the UFO guy. That's bizarre.
And so they saw this, and they told him, now these are at least one of these guys, because they had a lot of time on various runs, he had argued against the possibility of UFOs, but he was adamant that they had seen this thing. And now this may not be connected in any way, but all three of those men died within 16 months.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were all in their, I want to say, late 40s, early 50s, and they all died from very sudden things. Heart failure, what had a sudden, I looked at the death certificates, and I want to say it was a sudden breathing event or sudden pulmonary event, something like that. But all three of the witnesses died within 16 months of that sight. Yeah.
Well,
and so,
because the way that I look at UFOs, and I've talked about Joe, the way that they appear to us when people have these encounters, I believe that it's been here, and this is just the way that it's appearing to us. It's, it's the demonic reality of the world we're in, where, Elizabethan people would see little fairies going into a hill dressed like them. We expect it to be gray men and, ships and stuff like that. So, that's the immediate where I say, it sounds like a UFO. But the fact now that you're telling me that, death occurred after it, it's either an entity in and of itself, or it's, like a foreboding thing. Like, in other words, someone who saw it that could understand what it was may have said, oh, we're doomed. I mean,
Right.
it's like that. So, because I
Well,
believe that people see these aliens, but they're seeing something that's really always been here and in and out of our reality.
absolutely. Yeah, I tend to agree. I know when I was years ago, before I had any interest in this kind of stuff, I had a very strange dream about Revelstoke. I'd long since moved, but in it, I was walking with friends at night, and those friends split off to do their own thing. So in the dream, I was looking up the street, and of course it was empty. It was nighttime, but then a breeze picked up, and the street fluttered.
Mm.
So I thought, well, that's strange. So in the dream, I walked towards the fluttering, and I realized that the street is covered by these gossamer panels of some kind of fabric. There are several of them just stretched across the road. They're billowing just a little in the wind. And there is on the edge of each panel this flowing silver script that looks like some kind of Asian writing, maybe Japanese or Chinese. So I pull apart the curtains and I look, and behind the curtains, the street is actually quite busy. It's so bright that in the dream, I thought it was a movie set.
Mm.
And there are these black things. They almost look like praying mantises, man-size. And they're just climbing over everything. They look like they're working on power lines. They're working on cars. It's hard to I can't understand what they're doing, but they're working on things, and they're kind of conferring amongst themselves. And to the left, I see two of them, and it appears as though they're looking at some kind of document and talking. And then one of them sees me, and he points, kind of makes a clicking sound, and then just in a moment, all of a sudden, I'm seeing men in gray coveralls instead of these mantis things.
Mm.
And
wow.
Yeah, well, the reason I tell that story is because
shapeshifters.
Yeah, well, but see, I wrote it off as a dream, which is fine. But then I ran into someone about 6 weeks ago who had seen those very men in his waking life on his family's property, but he was the only one who could see them. I had never told him that story, but
wow.
he was a young boy. He lived on a farm here in Victoria, and he would see these men in gray coveralls wandering around the property, conferring with one another, checking paperwork. And he finally asked his mother, he said, "Are we supposed to be here?" And she said, "Well, yeah, of course, why not?" And he said, "Well, why do these men keep checking up on us?" She said, "Well, there are no men. I don't know what you're talking about." And he never saw them again.
Oh, once he shared it with someone else, he wouldn't see him. You see, but it seems like you saw him, I guess, as the way that they are. Or maybe the way that they are is the men, and they choose to appear as, neither of which is real. It's real spiritually or, supernaturally,
right.
But not real materially. So maybe they appear as anything to do with a praying mantis or insects of any kind. They can just have it. Okay. It's like, if I'm dreaming about bugs, I am up for, as soon as I wake up. It's, Dean can tell you, roaches, forget it. I'll leave the house. Mm-hmm. If there's one cockroach in the house and I can't get to him, I'll leave. I'll go outside. If you're like, go where you're going, go on. I just don't want to deal. So bugs in dreams, no, that's never a good thing for me. Never.
It was such a strange sight, I didn't think about it much. And again, I sort of just kind of held it as an interesting dream until, again, about 6 weeks ago when I ran into this person who told me they had seen these same men. And so we actually did a whole episode of the Ghost Story Guys about it. It was episode number 16. I believe it was called The Men Who Are Not There. And we did sort of a deep dive, looked around online, and we found other people who've had this experience. Not many, but a few. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a fascinating thing that again, somehow ties back to Revelstoke. And just one more ghost story, if we have time.
Yes, go.
Perfect. Okay, so the fellow who saw the UFO that I described, who was told about the UFO, he was a rancher, and he lived on a farm just south of town. So one night he was laying in bed, and his father-in-law had just died from cancer, and he died very painfully. Mm. So one night this guy's lying in bed about 2-3 in the morning. He said he can't even really remember why he woke up, but as he lay there in bed, he noticed there is light coming from the kitchenette just off the bedroom. They ran a bed and breakfast, so the bedrooms had its own private little kitchen area.
Mm.
And he thought, well, that's strange with the lights on. So he got out of bed. His wife was still asleep. Went into the kitchen, and there, sitting at the table, was his father-in-law. And he remembers very distinctly that his hair was slicked back. I think he wasn't wearing his glasses. And he said, Louis, and I love this because it's such a plain-spoken way of dealing with something this crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Louis, you're dead. What are you doing? And I guess Louis said, well, I wanted to come back to tell everyone else that I'm not in pain.
Mm.
I'm okay. I need you to tell them that. And with that, not only was Louis gone, but the light in the kitchen was off.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah, actual physical changes in the environment and this message. And of course, this fellow, I don't think he told anyone because he just didn't know how to frame it. He didn't know how to bring that up. By the way, I saw.
Oh, by the way. Yeah.
Exactly.
Give me a pound of ham sliced thin. Oh, by the way, I saw my dad. Well, no. Maybe down here, but no, that's wild. And that's very comforting, too. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, even people like us who encounter things like that, you still get, when you're getting closer to it, like your numbers coming up, it's like, oh God, I hope it's real.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, that's was, we have like probably about 7 or 8 minutes left, or maybe 6 minutes, but I guess faced with all this, and I want to have you back on, Brennan, too, so if Bernadine can reschedule with you. But so this kind of goes back to your not believing in a spirit reality or supernatural. I'm not saying God, but just basically everything that goes with the package, to where you are now, that's got to be like 180 degrees, right? And so how do you feel about, the continuation of life, the reality of ghosts, the possible reality of things that just don't have our best interests in mind. So, how do you feel making that complete turnaround from there's nothing to there is, an infinite number of things?
I shouldn't say it's a total 180. I'm still, and I understand this is not a popular point of view, but I don't believe in the Christian God. I simply don't. Mm-hmm. But I believe in the things I have seen. I believe in the things that my friends and family and the hundreds by now people I've spoken to have seen. And I believe that we will never truly understand the complexity of the universe. I think that I realize that saying there is nothing is such an infantile way of closing off your mind to the possibility and of avoiding having to do the heavy lifting. Because I think it often comes down to, well, there's no God, or I shouldn't say there's no God, but, well, bad things happen, therefore there is no God, or, it doesn't make rational sense that a single thing created everything, and therefore I'm going to close myself off. Because you don't have to entertain the minutia. You don't have to examine, why do people see these things? Mm-hmm. We don't have an explanation. You can say, well, mass hallucination. We don't have a mechanism for that. That's just words. It's an explanation that's not. And so I'm actually comforted by it. I'm comforted. I don't know that I necessarily believe that consciousness continues past the point of physical death. I think I'm closer to believing that now than I've ever have been in my life. And I certainly love the idea, just because I am enthralled by mystery. And the idea that once I'm done hauling around this meat sack, I then get to shuffle it off and go explore somewhere else. I love the idea of that. And so anything that enables me to venture out into the world and find something new and something I don't understand and try and make sense of it is okay by me. And that's really what this represents to me is a whole new world of things to try and understand. So I sort of take it as it comes, but I definitely would never again say there's nothing, because I think that's just simply not the case, and the evidence doesn't bear it out.
Well, good. Our walking Mercury retrograde Joe has not shown up. So, Dean, you probably have another question. Brennan, we're going to go until he, whack-a-mole
Okay.
comes up on the thing, and I'll let you know. So, go on, Dean.
Sure. So,
Well, I'm glad you're keeping an open mind, and life is a challenge and a mystery that we probably won't know until we cross over to the other side to know what's really there, and I'm sure by now you're not second guessing yourself when you see things as much as you were in the beginning. Because a lot of people second guess themselves, and especially people that don't believe to begin with.
mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So they do have dedicated skeptics that no matter what they see, what they hear, it could be in front of their face and they would still be a skeptic, and that's fine, But in your case, you went from that to believing because you witnessed all these things yourself.
Yeah, and I still
and that's a purpose for you. I'm sure it's a mission for you, actually.
Mm.
I think so. I was recently told that I have no karmic debt left, and by someone who apparently knows these things. And they said that it was therefore my choice to incarnate this time. Again, if you believe such things, and that that I must have done such a thing because I had things I was curious about, and I suspect this is that, because I am eminently curious about all this stuff, about the just the craziness that is the. I say natural world because it's all part of the natural order. I think when we say things like supernatural, I mean they're great words, but I think it's all ultimately natural. We just don't understand our place in it yet, and I think that's what it is. It's not that we don't understand the phenomenon; it's just we don't understand how we relate to it. And I think that's a big part of our journey as people, is trying to figure out where we fit in. Instead of trying to make the world fit to us, and you do that to a certain degree, but you also need to find the place where you fit. And I think that's, we've sort of been going about it the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
But this is
I'm sorry. We are still here. I'm sorry. I was distracted by something.
No worries.
Somebody walked in the room and said, "Are you taking a break?" I'm like, not yet. But anyway, no, because I wanted to ask. So you're okay with it, with where you are and everything. So how did your wife feel about it? And your friends? I mean, is she a believer, or is the jury still out with her, or what?
No, I think she got there before I did. She's always been into things like, like psychics and stuff like this. And even now, I'm pretty resistant to that. But no, she's very, very open. She's been very good about it. Most of my friends, my good friends, have been very open to it, and some of them have even kind of come along the way with me. And it's been really, really great to see that, sort of been able to take them, and in some cases them taking me, and just sort of expanding our relationship instead of having the same old narrow, same old narrow focus and the same old habits. So everyone's been pretty good, And again, I mean, there are some people who look at you funny, but I've always been weird. So the heck with them.
Especially in Walmart.
Oh, I do love a good Walmart. That's one of my favorite things. I like to go into Walmart or on the night shift. I remember years ago, we were driving. We ended up in Hurricane, Utah at about 2 a.m. We didn't have any clean clothes. We weren't going to be anywhere near a laundromat for several days. So we just went into Walmart at 3 a.m. and bought some new clothes. And I tell you, you learn a lot about life in Walmart, Hurricane, Utah at 3 a.m.
I bet you do. Like, I'll never do this again, right?
Correct. Yes, that was. Well, I say that, and then I ended up in a Walmart in Blacksburg, Virginia, at 2 a.m. about 3 years later.
See, you're so curious about everything, and that's great. I hope you never lose your curiosity about it. Well, Joe has arrived. He's come up. Boo! Yeah, he's a ghost, Carl. So we're about to end, but we want to have you back. And I want to say, if you are coming back to New Orleans at any time, let me know so I can set you up with a tour and some other stuff, and we could meet,
Oh, that'd be great. Love that.
That'd be great, and I could show you around a little bit to more safer area, to a little bit more safety, So, but
I'll pick a
what's
different place to stay.
yeah, let me know, okay, if you're coming, and then maybe Dean
Oh,
can come over too. She lives distant from me, but it's a couple hours drive. But so we're about to end, but tell us if anyone wants to find your book or get in touch with you, or otherwise find out about your show. Where do they go?
sure. Well, the book is A Strange Little Place: The Hauntings and Unexplained Events of One Small Town. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, basically wherever you find books, you'll find a copy of that. It's pretty easy to find. The show is the Ghost Story Guys. We run a podcast every 2 weeks. We tend to have guests. Sometimes we just try to take on different topics and look at the paranormal with a bit of an eye towards dispelling some myths and engaging with mystery and just having a good time. It's me and my co-host Ian Gibbs, who is the author of Victoria's Most Haunted, which just came out. You can also find wherever fine books are sold. And if you want to get a hold of me,
Yeah, I saw that on your page.
if you want to get a hold of me, best place would be send me a message through the Ghost Story Guys Facebook page. That's probably the fastest way to get a hold of me. Email, I tend to be a little slow on replying, but you get that little notification on your phone from Facebook, and you're just driven to respond to it. So that's the fastest way to get my attention.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, we also reciprocate guests. So if you ever want to have us on, our particular focus is on the supernatural dangers or the dangers of paranormal exploration. So if you ever
Great.
need a guest or a couple of guests, let us know, and we'll be glad
sure
to be
will.
on. So, all right. We are going to take a break here. Thank you so much, Brennan, for joining us tonight, and we want to have you back again. We are the Supernatural Substation on the United Public Radio Network, and we will be back after this little break.
Bye, Brennan.
You're back.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Supernatural Substation on this Friday night, October 6th, the first of several weekends or a few weekends until Halloween. My co-host Bernadine is back. Say hey again.
Hey.
Yeah, hey. Are you Italian?
I'm Italian.
Yeah, you came out of left field with that. Hey, I'm Italian. You know, I was like, wait, you scared me. I had to take my earplug out.
Impulse
Impulse,
control
like,
disorder.
Yeah, do that in a bar and, hold the drink up. Hey, we're Italian.
Yeah,
like mob hits, over here. I'm Italian too, mostly. Anyway, so he was a great guest, and I want to have him back.
Yes.
I always like to hear people who were totally convinced, that nothing like that would happen, ever to them or didn't exist, and then they experience it. I also,
I think he has a lot more to experience, though.
Yeah, evidently so. But I mean, at least he's honest about it. A lot of people who don't believe in, the supernatural or, don't laugh at the paranormal and everything, they stick to it and they never admit they're wrong. I mean, literally, I don't know.
I think a lot of them just worry about what people will think of them if they do believe, versus people like us that don't give a care.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I could always, gather around the water cooler. People always wanted to hear ghost stories and stuff from me, I'm a little concerned. Oh, I'm glad we've talked to him. Don't ever stay in Treme. Oh, there was a girl that went missing there during the summer.
Where is that? Because I've never heard of that.
It's like if you're looking at the French Quarter, the square, and the south is to your left and the north is to your right. It's like on the north east of the base of the French Quarter. It's adjacent to it. It's where St. Augustine Church is. It's where St. Augustine School is. It's in the area that was abutted by St. Bernard projects. Some of the St. Roch Cemetery. It's all up in that little pocket area up there. It's it's like the second oldest neighborhood or the third oldest neighborhood in New Orleans. It's traditionally African American people, and the whole the show Treme was based on that.
That's
I think
called the 8th Ward or something like that.
I think Ward. So. Yeah. Well, 7th Ward would be a little bit further south of that. Well, little east and then south. But it's just it's one of the neighborhoods, and it's also one of the worst neighborhoods in the city, bar none. It's like, why on earth, would you want to do this? There was, he said Airbnb, and he mentioned that, and that's exactly where that girl was staying, the one that went missing, and it's a shame because. Basically somebody just took her. She got dropped off by a cab or a taxi, I think, and that was the last they've ever heard. They're trying to sell this as like, some sort of a, I don't know, some sort of a hipster thing, on that end. But basically you've got Martin Luther King Boulevard right there. You've got Claiborne Avenue right there. You've got a project right there. It's just not good. I mean, don't go wandering and walking around.
Especially if you're a tourist and you've never been here before.
Right. And because he sounds like a guy who, basically he likes to explore and stuff on his own. And, I just wouldn't.
At night.
At night, yeah. Not in New Orleans. No, definitely.
The city comes alive at night in New Orleans.
I have a problem, in more ways than one. But I have a problem with people, like concierge at hotels and whatnot. They don't, they think they can't tell somebody, anyone to, like not walk over here at this time, or when you're in the French Quarter, don't go past, the certain amount. I mean, because seriously, every place in New Orleans abuts up to a bad neighborhood. And what do I mean by a bad neighborhood? I mean a bad neighborhood where there are thugs in the street and, they're going to kill you and take your stuff. They're going to hit you in the head. Well, it's really all over the city now. I mean, nowhere is really safe anymore.
They're
But there's some
sleeping
areas
in the street on your steps in the middle of broad daylight.
and having sex on the corner, don't forget. The
Correct.
gutter punks having sex in the gutter. I mean, it's just,
And it smells like that too.
it smells, yeah. It's all, I mean, talking to him had me really thinking about it. It really is since Katrina, and that, it's just sort of gone down. And, I don't know. Seriously. It's just a shame because I think, the future books that I'll write about New Orleans basically are going to be talking about, something that's dead. Because true New Orleans just isn't there anymore. And it really did start with Katrina. People hear about the Ninth Ward all the time and how it was basically eviscerated by the storm. A lot of the fun and the character of the city, and people love to call me a racist, but a lot of the character of the city, and by which I mean, the old line, sort of, I don't know, everyman type, the fun people, the people
Why
who
people used to come there.
Well, no, it's more than that. It's like New Orleans was always a diverse place, always. It accepted, and that was one of the things about it. People could come here who weren't accepted back, wherever, where they lived, and they could find and feel like home. They could find a community and they could be welcome here. We've always been tolerant. We've always welcomed diversity. And only lately, and it's only happened since the storm, really, has it, become this cesspit of crime and racism and hatred and division. And I think it's, I thought about it. It is all, Katrina started the downward spiral. It really did. And the Ninth Ward, a lot of those people were African American. A lot of those people, though, had families that went back, a mile long on a family tree. But they gave the city everything, like, the character, the good cooks, the stories, the history. And they were hit particularly hard. They were wiped out. And so a lot of them, God forbid, who didn't die, were driven out of town and couldn't come back because the place is still blighted because nobody takes care of anything in New Orleans, So, and I will say
like
that.
the old jazz musicians and people that used to make the quarter.
Right. And who made New Orleans. These are the people who ran the po' boy shops and, all the other stuff. And it's just not what I remember it to be. It's not what I grew up in and hadn't been for a long time. But now it's even, now I'm beginning to really put it together that, the New Orleans that we loved, that we knew, she's dead and they're really ravaging a corpse. But I hate to be so gloomy. Maybe, I don't know, Hurricane Nate will come and wash out the rest of it. But, it all comes down to, it's not a safe place. Don't come down
not
here
at this
to
time,
have any fun and you're not worried about, your body and other things. Just the other day, 3 men in a van tried to kidnap a woman in broad daylight and on the edge of the French Quarter. Okay. And she got away. I mean, this is happening here. So, seriously. And all these areas that are romanticized by TV, stay the hell away from them. They are romanticized. Okay. You go there and you could be killed and you could disappear and your family will never hear from you again. Don't live in these areas and move into them. But anyway, that said, we're about close to wrapping it up here. So, it was a really good guest. Who do we have next week coming up, Bernadine?
Well, for our first 30, we have Jonathan Foray, which is going to promote the Rougarou Fest that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And we have our guest, Rich Newman, which is author, and he's going to be promoting his new book, Haunted Civil War Sites.
Ooh, I can't wait to talk to him. Excellent.
Yeah.
Part of our Guests of October, I guess, series. It just came up with that, right before the show went on. All righty. If you want to contact Miss Bernadine, give out your email, Bernadine.
It is Bernadine, Bernadine at lspr-society.com.
And the website is www.lspr-society.com. Is that it?
Yes.
See, I remembered that.
Yeah.
I remembered that. Yeah. And so if you want to find me, I don't
You're
keep it
everywhere.
I'm a low profile. I'm on Facebook. Where the Supernatural Substation is on Facebook. Go like us. We have a YouTube channel called The Supernatural Substation. It's just genius from MIT thought that up. Go and please subscribe there because we are trying to build up our following on YouTube. You can get me at my new site, which is temporarily ElleenPastanio.wixsite, W-I-X site.com. And stay tuned for Miss Kathy Bilski, Quantum Leap. She's going to get high down there in Hawaii where there are no storms. Remember that we are a part of the iHeartRadio network, and stay up to get creeped out tonight. Terminus, 2 a.m. Saturday morning. It is Psychomantic tonight. So, some creepy stuff getting you ready for Halloween. There he is. See Joe cutting in. He needs to do it when there's no noise in the background. But anyway, have a great weekend. Stay dry. Figure it out. I'll probably be here next week. If not, I might be on a raft somewhere. Anyway, we will be back next Friday. The Supernatural Substation on the United Public Radio Network. Thanks and good night.
Good night. Night, night.
Night, night.
I'm Gil Broussard, a member of the Louisiana Home Builders PAC. I'm here to say Louisiana has some of the highest taxes in the nation. I'm asking you to vote yes on Amendment 1 on October the 14th to make sure they don't get even higher. Voting yes on Amendment 1 will keep you from paying unfair new taxes while building your new home or business. Please vote yes on Amendment 1 to prevent new taxes that will affect your future. Election Day is this Saturday, October the 14th.
Paid for by Louisiana Taxpayer Protection PAC.